On the first day of April, 1928, a wire story ran in the Washington Sunday Star. It was 4 sentences long. It said, "A man named Nathan B. Stubblefield, who in 1902 claimed to have discovered the wireless telephone, had been buried at Murray, Kentucky, after searchers found his body in an isolated farm home. The coroner said he had been dead for several days." Several days. Nobody had noticed. The man in that 4-sentence obituary had once stood on the Murray Court Square and made 1,000 people hear a voice come out of the ground. The New York Times called him a radio pioneer who died poor and embittered. And this county has been arguing about him ever since. Welcome back to Dark History of the Jackson Purchase. Last time, the Night Riders. Today, the melon farmer from Callaway County who heard the future. The postcards that called Murray the birthplace of radio, and the barn outside Almo where the story ends. Nathan Beverly Stubblefield was born near Murray in 1860, the son of a lawyer they called Captain Billy. When the boy was 14, his father died, and his schooling died with him. So he taught himself. While he farmed melons to feed a growing family, he read Scientific American and Electrical World cover to cover, over and over, out where the town lights ended. Neighbors thought of him as a farmer who tinkered. They were wrong about the proportions. He was a tinkerer who farmed. Here's the part almost nobody remembers. Before the wireless, Stubblefield ran a telephone business. In the late 1880s, he patented a vibrating telephone. No batteries, just taut wire and vibration, and strung it between stores and houses around Murray. For a few years, if you talked to someone across town without leaving your porch, you likely did it through his hands. Then, the Bell Company's wires reached Callaway County, and his little exchange was finished. The first time the future arrived, it took his living. It would not be the last. The story goes, and it comes to us from one man telling it decades later, that in 1892, Stubblefield handed a box to a young lawyer named Rainey T. Wells, walked off across the field, and spoke into the earth. Wells swore he heard it come booming out of the device. "Hello, Rainey," he said. I jumped a foot. I said to myself, "This fellow is fooling me. He has wires someplace." And then, but there were no wires, I tell you. Remember the name Rainey Wells. He comes back at the end of this story, standing over a monument. January 1st, 1902. The Murray Court Square, the same square that's there today. Stubblefield set his transmitter by the courthouse, drove steel rods into the winter ground, and placed listening stations in businesses up to 6 blocks away. Then his 14-year-old son Bernard spoke into the box. "Hello, can you hear me? Now I will count 10. Then he whispered. Then he played a harmonica. And in shops and offices all over downtown Murray, the sound came up out of the ground. No wires anywhere. A New York paper reported that fully half the citizens of the town were convinced. Music, songs, whispered conversations, quote, heard with perfect ease. There was no radio broadcasting anywhere on Earth in January 1902. Marconi's wireless could send dots and dashes. In Murray, Kentucky, a farmer sent the human voice. The St. Louis Post-Dispatch sent a reporter to the farm and put him in the Sunday paper. And what Stubblefield told that reporter should have made him immortal. He said his invention would one day send, quote, simultaneous messages from a central distributing station over a very wide territory. Farmers would get the weather news. Eventually, he said, it will be used for the general transmission of news of every description. That is a description of broadcasting, Radio as You Know It, spoken by a Kentucky melon farmer 6 years before the word existed. That spring, they chartered him a steamer on the Potomac called the Bartholdi. Shipped ashore, with senators' guests aboard, a harmonica on the bank, heard clear on the water. Then Philadelphia, from a mansion in Fairmount Park, a third of a mile, clean. The papers compared him to Marconi. He told them with no apparent doubt, "This may seem like boasting. It is not. It is a fact." But the men who chartered that steamer were not scientists. They were promoters. The Wireless Telephone Company of America was incorporated far away in Arizona territory. $5 million of paper stock. They paid Stubblefield 500,000 shares for his rights. The shares were the product. He was the advertisement. When a demonstration in New York City failed, Manhattan's rock and buried pipes swallowed his ground currents, the company's secretary proposed a fix: secretly bury a cable and fake it. Stubblefield refused. He resigned by letter on June 19, 1902, and wrote, "I shall take immediate steps when I reach home to turn on the lights, that the public may not be swindled by this fellow as I have been." Back in Murray, he put it more plainly. The New York crowd was a bunch of damned rascals. He came home with worthless paper, a poisoned name, and his secret still in its box. He kept working. In 1908, the government granted him United States Patent 887357, wireless telephone. It's real. You can read it today. But the physics was a dead end. His system's reach grew only as big as the coils he wound. He built one 40 feet across in his yard, chasing a mile. Meanwhile, other men, Fessenden, then in industry, put voice on true radio waves which reached over oceans. The world he had predicted arrived on someone else's machine, and his own world came apart. In 1912, his eldest children, the farm was legally theirs, sold the land and scattered. In 1917, his wife Ada left. He was 57 and alone. He drifted north of town, out toward Almo. First a shack he built between 4 trees. Then an old buggy barn on Carl Crisp's farm. His cousin Vernon, the Murray druggist, quietly fed him for his last 6 years. The neighbors talked. Strange lights at his place, they said. Voices out of the air. 2 weeks before the end, he told a neighbor, Mrs. Owen, "I've lived 50 years before my time. The past is nothing. I have perfected now the greatest invention the world has ever known. I've taken light from the air and earth, as I did sound." Then the smoke stopped rising from the barn. When Carl Crisp and the neighbors went in, Nathan Stubblefield had been dead for days. The coroner called it heart disease. The town would come to call it starvation. Either way, the man who invented talking at a distance died with no one to talk to. They buried him in Bowman Cemetery, north of Murray. Outside the family's iron fence, his grave marked with an iron rod. His wife did not come. Neither did a single one of his children. The road that runs past that cemetery has a name now. You've seen the sign. Radio Road. Ask around Murray why, and you'll get more than one answer. Some say it's for the old station transmitter. Some say it's for the man lying just off it. But when his children finally set him a stone 24 years later, they chose the words themselves. Inventor of wireless telephony, or radio. 2 years later, almost to the day, 2,500 people gathered at the new college in Murray to dedicate a monument to him. The man presiding was Rainey T. Wells, the same Rainey who heard, "Hello, Rainey," in a field. now the founder of Murray State. And here is the detail that should stop you cold. The tablet says his home stood 100 feet west of that stone. The campus grew up beside the very ground where he did it. The town that let him die alone built its university next to his field, named its radio station WNBS for him, and printed Birthplace of Radio on its postcards. So, was it true? Honestly, what he did was real. What it wasn't was radio. His voice traveled through the ground and through coils, not on the radio waves your car picks up. Historians have checked. They even rebuilt his machine, and it works. He wasn't the father of radio. He was something stranger. He was a man who saw radio, described it out loud to a newspaper in January 1902, and could not build the road to it. 50 years before his time, by his own count. Next time you're at the corner of Main and North 16th, look west and give him a nod. Thanks for sitting with another story without easy heroes. Follow the page so you don't miss the next one. The year the government decided a river needed to die, and drowned 2 towns, moved 3,000 graves, and built the biggest dam in the TVA system at Gilbertsville. Some of those families would be moved again and again. That story's coming. Until then, keep your porch light on.